Today is Thursday, May 4th. We'll tell you the latest move from the Federal Reserve as interest rates go up again. Also, an assassination attempt or a staged attack. The U.S. is trying to figure out exactly what happened over Russia's capital. And we'll explain an in-depth mission to take down one of the world's biggest mafias. Plus, a medical achievement that was years in the making. A new way to log into your Google accounts. And what to know about King Charles' upcoming coronation. Those stories and more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. For the 10th time in 14 months, the Federal Reserve decided to raise interest rates. This time, they went up by 1/4 percentage point. That takes the rate to a target range of 5 to 5.25%, the highest since 2007. And a far cry from what the range was before this series of historic hikes, which was near zero. The Fed left the door open to another increase at its next meeting, so if inflation still seems out of control, they have that option. There's also a good possibility the Fed decides to pause its rate hikes after this one. But don't expect any rate cuts anytime soon. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell explained that inflation is going to take some time to come down, and it wouldn't be appropriate to go back on things now. As you know, these rate hikes make borrowing money for things like credit cards, homes, and cars more expensive. The Fed hopes by making these moves, people and businesses will start borrowing and spending less, so the economy will cool down and prices will stop going up. Though there are also fears that it could go too far and cause a recession. Unfortunately, we have yet another mass shooting to tell you about this morning. This one happened in Atlanta, Georgia. Law enforcement officials say the suspected shooter was at a medical facility for an appointment when he apparently became agitated, pulled out a gun, and started shooting people in the waiting room. 5 women were shot between the ages of 25 and 71. One of them died. Others are critically hurt. Police say the gunman left the doctor's office and went to a nearby gas station where someone had left their truck running and unattended, so he jumped in and took off. An undercover officer ended up tracking him down about 7 hours later, and he was arrested. Authorities say they're still investigating his motive. Well, there are new serious allegations coming from both Russia and Ukraine this morning. The Russian government says Ukraine tried to assassinate Russia's president through an orchestrated drone attack on his home. But Ukraine says that's not true, and that Russia could be telling the story to justify a large-scale terror event. Either would be a pretty big escalation of the conflict that started with Russia's invasion 14 months ago. The New York Times says it has verified video footage of 2 explosions over the government complex in Russia. But as of this morning, American intelligence agencies are still trying to figure out exactly what really happened. Police in Europe carried out what's being called the most sweeping cross-border operation to date against the richest mafia in the West. Raids in Italy, Germany, and Belgium were the culmination of years of investigations that apparently included undercover officers becoming good friends with organized crime families. In the end, authorities arrested 200 people and confiscated several tons of cocaine. Plus, they seized businesses they say were used to launder cash for the mob, including restaurants, ice cream parlors, and car washes. Reports say the operation deals a major blow to the 'Ndrangheta crime syndicate, which is one of the world's most powerful criminal organizations with a big role in the global drug trade. It started in Italy, then expanded across Europe to the Americas and Australia. The group's annual revenue is said to be about $55 billion. But these raids are expected to disrupt the mob's activities, at least temporarily. Here in the U.S., most overdose deaths are caused by synthetic opioids like fentanyl. A new CDC report says the American overdose death rate involving fentanyl nearly quadrupled between 2016 and 2021. The rates of overdose deaths linked to other drugs saw increases as well, but they didn't reach the levels of fentanyl. This data is supposed to help officials come up with plans to tackle this issue. So next week, the FDA is meeting with the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration about the best strategies for starting opioid addiction treatment. A vaccine scientists have been trying to develop for decades has just gotten the official green light. The FDA approved the nation's first RSV vaccine. That's a huge milestone, because even though RSV leads to just mild sickness for most people, it can be life-threatening for older people and some very young children. This newly approved vaccine is made by GSK and just for people 60 and older. It was found to be nearly 83% effective. Though health officials are also asking for more information about a possible association between the shots and a rare neurological disorder. That popped up as a possibility in a trial that tested out this new vaccine with a flu shot. Next, the CDC needs to weigh in with specific recommendations, and that's expected to happen next month. Then the vaccine maker expects to have enough ready to go in time for the next fall and winter respiratory illness season. There could be options soon, too. Pfizer's RSV vaccine, also for older adults, is expected to be approved as well by the end of this month. Vaccine makers are also working on an RSV shot designed for pregnant people in order to protect their newborns. If all goes well, it could be approved by the end of this year, too. We have more news still coming up, but first, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment for yourself. For me, that's been especially true after becoming a parent. But even before that, I know what it's like to feel pulled in a million directions. And yet, I found that I'm actually more present and energized for those that I love when I do find a little more space for myself. Therapy has given me the tools to have more of that balance in my life. I know some of you are thinking there's literally not enough time in the day. I get it. But often, it's not about finding more time. Therapy made me realize I was wasting precious energy on things I don't actually need to worry about or do, and equipped me with strategies I didn't even know I needed. If you're not sure where to start with therapy, BetterHelp is an option entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and flexible, so getting started is doable. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/newsworthy today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Well, there are some new concerns over how much America's kids are learning about social studies. The Education Department came out with what's called the nation's report card this week. It shows that last year, 8th graders' scores in U.S. history and civics fell to the lowest levels on record. The tests are given out once every 4 years, and that means these results are the first to have come out since the pandemic disrupted learning for millions of American students. Last fall, the scores were released for math and reading, and they also showed steep drops from earlier years. At least with history, though, the pandemic is not the only thing to blame. Average history grades have fallen for nearly a decade. This time, about 40% of 8th graders scored below the basic standards, and just 13% of 8th graders were considered proficient in the subject. The average score was 258 out of a possible 500. Now the Education Department is suggesting more social studies lessons for kids, and they're pushing for less what they call censorship. Federal regulators are moving to keep Facebook and Instagram's parent company Meta from making any money off kids' data. The FTC wants to strengthen earlier privacy orders since the agency says Meta has not fully complied. It says Meta gave developers access to users' private information and was not clear about privacy rules on the Messenger Kids app, like who exactly kids can communicate with. So it says Meta should now use kids' data for security purposes only. The FTC is proposing other limitations as well, like it wants Meta to get users okay before using facial recognition technology. And it says Meta should not be allowed to launch anything new until an assessor goes in to confirm that Meta is complying with the FTC agreements. Well, Meta says the FTC's move is a, quote, political stunt, saying the commission didn't even give the company the chance to discuss the allegations before coming up with new rules. So it's going to fight against these new limits. Meta now has a month to formally respond. After that, the FTC will decide whether to make the proposals official. Google is taking a step toward a future without passwords. Starting now, anyone with a Google account has the option to do away with passwords and verification codes and instead go with passkeys. Examples of passkeys include a fingerprint, face scan, or screen lock pin. Google says passkeys are safer than passwords and they're resistant to the kind of cyber attack known as phishing. But they only work with certain devices, like iPhones and Androids running on somewhat recent operating systems. For now, passkeys are just an option, and users who do set them up can still log in with passwords when they want to, like if they're using a public computer. Airbnb is revamping its platform ahead of what's expected to be an especially busy summer travel season. The home rental company is rolling out more than 50 new features and upgrades. A lot of them have to do with cost. The new system lets guests look at the total, including all fees, across the entire app. And it will lower the total fees and introduce a buy now, pay later type option. Hosts will also be able to actually see what guests pay to stay at their place, not just what they are making from the booking. Plus, they'll be able to add discounts and compare their listing to similar ones in their area. Another change you may notice, Airbnb will highlight a separate category for private rooms within someone's home, which usually costs much less than getting a whole place to yourself. These changes apparently address some of the issues described on millions of customer service tickets, tens of thousands of social media posts, and listening sessions. Airbnb now has more than 4 million hosts who have welcomed 1.4 billion guests around the world. It's one of the music industry's most prestigious honors, induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And this year, the institution decided to induct its first female rapper, a country music legend, and a rebellious rap rock band, just to name a few. The class of 2023 was announced this week, including Missy Elliott, Willie Nelson, Rage Against the Machine, Sheryl Crow, Chaka Khan, and more. This year's induction ceremony is set for November. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Think to Know Thursday. But first, a message from our sponsor, Castle Flex. I'm sure you've heard how stretching is such a big thing right now. There are new stretch places opening up across the country, and for good reasons. In fact, a recent study found that stretching is even more effective than brisk walking for certain health benefits. But just like anything, there are ways to go about it that are likely better than others. My new go-to for stretching is Castle Flex, and it's my husband's new favorite as well. Really, we've both been dealing with some back issues in the last year or so. Mine was originally from a car accident that I thought was healed, but after lifting a toddler every day, I've realized it's really not. And my husband has been dealing with something even worse, herniated discs. So we both really needed a solution. CastleFlex is already making a big difference for both of us. In 2021, the inventor was struggling with herniated discs himself, and that's why he created the device called CastleFlex. It healed him in less than a year. So learn more at CastleFlex, flex with 2 X's, castleflex.com, and be sure to use our code NEWS10 for 10% off. Again, follow the link in our episode notes and then get 10% off with the code NEWS10, NEWS10. Okay, now back to Think to Know Thursday. This weekend, history is being made in the UK. King Charles will be officially crowned in a royal hoopla known as his coronation. Kings and queens of England have been crowned at London's Westminster Abbey for the better part of 1,000 years, and King Charles will be too on Saturday. He'll sit on a historic coronation chair and be presented with golden orbs, scepters, swords, and a ring, all of which symbolize the monarch's power, authority, and duties, as well as the power of God. It's a deeply religious ceremony with hymns and prayers. The Archbishop of Canterbury will be the one placing the heavy crown upon Charles' head. And this year, for the first time, religious leaders representing Buddhist, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, and Sikh traditions will play an active role in the ceremony, too. Outside of the event, thousands of people are going to be gathered to witness the display, a parade, and the biggest military procession in 70 years. The public foots the bill for the whole thing. There's no official estimate yet of what it might cost, but some reports say it could top $125 million. Thank you so much for listening today. We will catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.